All right. This is part 2 of the laying of plans on warfare and deception. All warfare is based on deception. That's from Sun Tzu. Now, what do you need for deception? Because you could go into what does that mean, and that's not very useful. I had a whole 30-minute conversation with my cousin about it. It's not very useful for a general setup for people to actually pull things away from. So, instead of figuring out what that means, I'm just going to take it at face value. But what do you need for deception? You need a deceiver and a deceived. To adequately use this principle in a way that won't make you unnecessary enemies, you need framing. So the way in which you frame makes it so that you are at war or you're not at war. You don't need to be at war, and thus you don't need to deceive, because you're not doing warfare. You're just using war tactics, which is slightly different. If you use war tactics, you don't need an enemy. Warfare tends to need an enemy. But people tend to work very well when they have a heading and a dragon to slay. So if they have somewhere to go and someone to go against, they tend to work very well. And it doesn't need to be a someone, it can also be a something. So, who, or more often, what, is your enemy? In a lot of cases, it can be things. It could be sugar. It could be more nebulous. It could be procrastination. It could be social media. It could be that one dude at work who's constantly eating your pudding, and thus warfare is needed. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make them believe we are near. Hold out baits to entice the enemy, feign disorder, and crush him. If he has secured all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. Pretend to be weak, that he may grow arrogant. Now, in one of the pieces here, it says, if he is in superior strength, evade him. That doesn't mean you run from him. That means you don't let him hit you. So there's an interesting piece there. So, let's frame this against procrastination. So when facing procrastination, identify the enemy. Who or what is stopping you from victory? And that would be your very own brain that you must deceive. So when you are at work, make your brain think you are at play. When at play, think you are at work. When with plenty time, work as if you have little. When with little, work as if you have plenty. In following these principles, while facing procrastination, you will be victorious. Some of these things seem slightly counterintuitive, but I've actually used a lot of these in facing my own procrastination, and it works surprisingly well for a book that's like hundreds of years old. How old is Art of War? Hold on. Yeah, for a book that's over 2,000 years old, it holds up pretty well, I would say. So you must keep in mind that this framework is not the easiest to alter when facing more abstract foes. So the best way to address this is to use the 5 constant factors in the last video. I'm probably going to reshoot that at some point so it's a little bit more straightforward. But the 5 constant factors tell you where to hit your enemy, because that shows you where they are weak and where you are strong. So it shows you what you can fall back on when you need to defend, and it shows you what you need to attack for your enemy. It also shows you what you can improve on yourself and your plans so that the enemy can't hit you as hard as you can hit them. Finally, always remember, while heading the profit of my counsel, avail yourself also of any helpful circumstance over and beyond the ordinary rules. According as circumstances are favorable, one should modify one's plans. So when your plans are getting made, you base your plans off of your circumstances. The general rules apply because warfare is all about efficiency. So if you're trying to be as efficient as possible, following warfare is pretty solid, because when you have two warring factions, it's who is more efficient. But you always modify your plans to your circumstances. That's why they're your plans. These things are general overviews which give you a framework to work around and work within, but if you find something that doesn't quite fit into the framework, you don't just follow the framework, you shift what you're doing to face it accordingly. So, yeah,